Today we're going to do scientific notation, and this is part 2. So part 1 we learned how to turn it into scientific notation and then how to turn it back into standard form. So couple things I'm going to remind you of before we start this part, because we have been dealing with exponents. So if I have 3x squared times 2x to the 4th, then you need to remember that we multiply the bases. So that's going to be 3 times 2, which will give us 6. And then we add the exponents. So that's going to be 2 plus 4. So we'll have 6x to the 6th. Okay, now that was the product rule. Now the power to a power rule, and this is how some of y'all got confused on this one. So if I had 3x squared, and then it's all raised to the second power, remember there's an understood 1 with the 3, so we have to take this 2 and multiply it. Okay, so this will become 3 to the 2nd power and x to the 4th power, which is 3 to the 2nd power. Don't do 3 times 2, it's really 3 times 3, so that would be 9x to the 4th. Okay, so now that we've remembered those, let's work on some problems that are in scientific notation. So the same principle applies, where we still have to multiply the bases. So the bases in this case would be 8.5 and 1.7. So we're just going to do 8.5. So right over here we'll say multiply bases. We're going to do 8.5 times 1.7. So when we do that, that'll give us 14.45. Okay, then remember we add the exponents. So our exponents are 2 and 6. So 2 plus 6 will give us 8. So this will be times 10 to the 8. Now, we can't stop there because this is 14 and it's not between 1 and 9. So we have to make sure that it is. So we have to move the decimal place 1 time, and we're moving it to the left. When we move it to the left, that's a positive direction. So we're going to end up with 1.445 times 10 to the 9, because we went 1 positive direction. So that means we had to add 8 plus 1. That's how we got 9, so this is our answer. Okay, let's look at another example. So this one again is like a power to a power. So we have the 2 outside here. Remember, this has an understood 1, so we still have to multiply. So this will become 1.5 squared times 10 to the negative 6, because we had to multiply 2 times negative 3. Okay, then let's go ahead and square 1.5. So 1.5 times 1.5. Don't do it times 2. And then we will get 2.25 times 10 to the negative 6. Is this between 1 and 9? Yes, so we don't have to do anything else to it. That is our answer. Okay, so I know whenever we did division, that's when it got really tough and we had to deal with negative numbers also. So this is what we have to remember. You still divide your numbers. So I'm going to hang on to this and just leave it right there for a second. I'm going to divide 1.2 divided by 1.6. Okay, that'll give us 0.75. Now remember, you subtract your exponents, but you can't have negative exponents, so I've got to move this up to the top. Once I move it up to the top, then I'm going to have another exponent of 10 to the 3. Now I can just add these two, and this will be 10 to the 7th power. Now, is this between 1 and 9? No. So I've got to move the decimal. This time I'm moving it to the right, so that's a negative direction. So I have to subtract 1. So I'm going to do 7 minus 1, which is 6. So I'll get 7.5 times 10 to the 6. Okay, I know that was a lot, so let's try a few examples. So I want you to go ahead and try the first two and see what you get. Okay, you had time to try the first two. So now you're just going to do 4.4 times 1.5 and then add your exponents. Okay, so you should have gotten 6.6 times 10 to the, well, you're going to add 3 plus negative 7, so you'll get negative 4. And in scientific notation, this is how we leave it. Okay, go ahead and, well, you should have already tried the second one, so we're just going to do 7.3 times 5.8. And you should get 42.34 times, and then you'll have 10 to the negative 5 plus 2, which would be negative 3. Now we can't leave this like this because this is a 42 and it's not between 1 and 9, so I need to move the decimal 1 spot, and I'm going in a positive direction, so I'm going to add 1. So I'll end up with 4.234 times 10 to the negative 2 because I had to add 1. All right, now I want you to go ahead and try 3 and 4. See what you get. All right, you've had time to try 3 and 4. So remember, we're going to divide our numbers. So 6 divided by 8. And we're going to leave it in decimal form, not in fraction form, because we're dealing with scientific notation. So we'll get 0.75. And then remember, we've got to do a lot of moving around. So we've got to move this here because it's a negative, and we've got to move this down here because it's a negative. So we'll really end up with 10 to the 6 over 10 to the 3. So we'll do 6 minus 3 and get 10 to the 3rd. Now this is not between 1 and 9, so I've got to move the decimal 1 place. That's a negative direction. So I'll get 7.5, and we got to subtract 1, so 3 minus 1 will give me 2, so times 10 to the 10 squared or 10 to the 2. Okay, let's try 4. So remember, divide your numbers. So 5.4 divided by 1.8, and you'll get 3. This one kind of works out nicely. Now remember, you've got to move your 5 here, move your 2 here. So you're going to end up with 10 to the 2 over 10 to the 5. So we're going to have negative exponents because they're going to be in the bottom. So we're going to end up with 10 to the negative 3. So times 10 to the negative 3. Now this is between 1 and 9, so I'm finished. That one works out kind of nicely. All right, let's try 5 and 6. Okay, you've had time to try 5 and 6. So let's see, we're going to cube the 5, because remember there's a 3 there, and there's an understood 1 here, so we'll have 5 to the 3rd times 10 to the, well, we're going to do negative 8 times 3, so negative 24. So 5 to the 3rd power, remember, is 5 times 5 times 5, so don't do 5 times 3 and say it's 15, because it's not. So it'll be 125 times 10 to the negative 24. Remember, there's always a decimal with every number, so you just take the decimal where it would be at the end right here. We're going to move it twice, 1, 2, and that's going to be in a positive direction. So we're going to end up with 1.25. Remember, we went 1, 2, positive direction. So negative 24 plus 2. So times 10 to the negative 22. That's because I did negative 24 plus 2. That was a 2 in a positive direction. Okay, let's look at the very last one, and we're going to do 1.4 squared times 10 to the 3 times 2, which would give us 6. 1.4 squared is going to be 1.96 times 10 to the 6, and it's already in scientific notation, so we're done.